The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.
Trapped in a world of sadness, spirits plunge into a dark void of absolute hopelessness. It seems there's only one way out: depression. It's not just a dark mood, it's a dangerous disease with a horrifying death toll. Find out why there's new hope for the hopeless today on Today's Health.
What happens when a mood slips into a deep, dark abyss? Sleeping and eating become almost impossible, and loved ones seem to fade away. It can be a 24-hour-a-day nightmare called depression. Hello, I'm Kathleen Sullivan, and this is Today's Health. And in this special edition, we'll explore major depression and find out why there's new hope for people who fall victim to this debilitating mood disorder. But first, let's take a closer look at a disease that may be a lot more common than you think.
Joie de vivre, the sheer joy of being alive. It lets us enjoy the good times and roll through the bad. But in a life without joy, even the good times look glum, and adversity can send one reeling down into the depths of despair. The disease known as major depression does just that. It drains all the joy out of life, while it sends a victim's mood deeper and deeper into the dark blackness of despondency.
If you could think of the worst you've ever felt in your life, perhaps after the death of a loved one, and imagine feeling that way every day and not knowing why you feel that bad, that's what depression is like.
This isn't just a case of the blues. It's a dangerous and chronic mental plunge into a sea of gloom and doom. Depression is among the most common and destructive of all illnesses prevalent in the U.S. today. The National Institute of Mental Health estimates that approximately 11.5 million Americans suffer from this mood disorder during any 6-month period. But just what is depression? Actually, there are 2 main types. Major depression, which is the most common, is characterized by feelings of sadness and irritability, or loss of interest and enjoyment in almost all usual activities. Bipolar disorder, which used to be known as manic depression, includes episodes of total euphoria followed by bouts of deep sadness. Irritable mood, changing sleep patterns, loss of appetite, inability to feel pleasure, feelings of worthlessness, fatigue, poor concentration, and recurrent thoughts of death and suicide are a few of the symptoms that may plague someone suffering from major depression. Untreated, these symptoms can last several months to 2 years. Available medications can successfully treat these symptoms in over 80% of the cases. Experts now believe that in addition to psychological, genetic, and traumatic factors, depression stems from an imbalance of a certain brain chemical called serotonin. Every day, modern science teaches us more about major depression. What we already know is it's a disease that can make life so miserable, death looks like the only way out.
Statistics and symptoms may help define depression in America today, but a clinical report doesn't give you any insight into the horror that overtakes upbeat, normal individuals. These personal stories may help you understand the people behind the numbers.
I didn't want to go anywhere.
I didn't care about other people. I didn't care about me.
I really didn't want to do anything.
I didn't want to talk to anybody.
I just stayed by myself.
All I wanted to do was cry and sleep. I was always overshadowed by this blackness that seemed to keep down every emotion that I felt. Little by little, everything that I used to take enjoyment out of went away. Nothing was fun, everything was hard, everything was sad.
I didn't go to anything. I refused invitations. I just stayed by myself. It's like part of your life stops. It's being hit by lightning. I didn't sleep, and when I did, it was because I wasn't going out, I was hanging about, and I'd fall on my bed and fall asleep during the day.
If this is what the rest of my life is going to be like, then I don't want the rest of my life. That's when I said I have to find somebody that can help me.
I made up my mind that I was going to seek help.
I didn't want to pop a pill every day, but I also knew that I wanted to be well.
I started taking this medication every day.
It was amazing, the transition.
Little by little, I could see changes.
I went home and I remember I was so full of, oh wow, I felt something.
To me, it's a miracle because it has certainly altered my life.
For the first time in years, I really felt something, and it was okay, and it was mine, and that black shadow was gone away.
Depression. The darkness in your soul comes from an imbalance in your brain. But every day, neuroscience sheds new light on our gray matter. There could be blue skies ahead. Find out why when we return on Today's Health.
We all know that life is full of ups and downs, and we all get the blues from time to time. But major depression can get you down and hold you down. It's not just a sad mood, it's a chemical malfunction.
Snap out of it used to be about the only advice anyone could give someone afflicted with major depression. But the disease is not simply a mood you snap out of. It's believed to be triggered by a chemical imbalance in the brain, and until your body can correct that malfunction, you could be stuck in a very debilitating state. Fortunately, modern medicine does have a few tricks up its sleeve for treating major depression.
There are essentially three major ways to treat depression. They include psychotherapy of various types, electroconvulsive therapy or shock therapy as it's sometimes known, and a variety of antidepressant medications now available. Psychotherapy is most effective for relatively mild depression. Electroconvulsive shock therapy is reserved for the most severe forms of depression.
By far, the most common treatment methods for depression is a combination of psychotherapy and antidepressive medication.
The first group of antidepressants introduced in the United States were the tricyclic antidepressants, beginning in 1963. They are very effective antidepressants, but unfortunately they have a very unfavorable side effect profile. The second group of drugs introduced were the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, or the MAOIs. These are also effective, but unfortunately also have a very unfavorable side effect profile.
In the 80s, a new generation of antidepressants were developed and classified as aminoketones, fluoxetine, and sertraline. Well, their names may be big, but their key improvement is that they can cause fewer side effects. Although each one is chemically different, they all can relieve the symptoms of major depression by blocking the reuptake of the brain chemical serotonin. The chemistry may baffle you and I, but the continued development of effective antidepressive medications serves a twofold purpose. Primarily, it helps the victims recover from a very frightening disease. And almost as important, it proves to the world that depression is not simply a character flaw. It is a very serious illness.
It's kind of ironic. We know more about the stars and planets millions of miles out in the universe than we know about this vital organ just above our shoulders. Fortunately, the understanding of the brain is expanding rapidly.
If you think the patterns on the screen are some sort of new inkblot test, think again. They're metabolic images of the brain generated by positron emission tomography. And they may give us a better understanding of what's going on above our shoulders than any Rorschach test ever did. PET scans and magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, are just a few of the high-tech machines that may help us open the door into the baffling world of our brain.
The brain is a series of wires and chemicals and specialized units that allows it to receive information that comes from all parts of our body through specialized end organs, like the eye and the ear.
The answers to major depression, Parkinson's disease, anxiety, schizophrenia, and other mental disorders may be hidden deep inside our gray matter. Research centers like the University of Miami Brain Endowment Bank specialize in trying to unravel the mysteries of neurotransmitters, or chemical messengers, that transmit electrochemical signals between nerve cells.
Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's involved in the way we feel about our environment, and it's thought to be important for a disease called affective disorders or depression. Understanding the mechanisms working inside the brain can help identify the chemical malfunctions that trigger diseases like major depression, and also guide the development of new medications to counteract the effects of mental disorders. When someone has a low mood or someone has a reactive depression to a death of a loved one, there's a change in this neurochemical called serotonin. New drug treatments for major depression aim to pinpoint this chemical, serotonin, and may bring new hope to people who suffer from these disorders. As a neuroscientist, I can sit here today and tell you that I believe that within the next 10 years, we are learning so much about the brain that we will actually have a fundamental breakthrough.
The disease makes suicide look tempting. What are the warning signs someone may take their own life? What does being in the mood have to do with lifting your spirits? All this and more when we return on Today's Health.
What prompts someone to take their own life? Too often it's depression's cage of gloom. Estimates show that more than half of those who commit suicide suffer from a depressive illness. And today's medications have side effects, but they might be a lot better than the untimely loss of vital human life.
Suicide is a very worrisome, very serious complication of depression. The objective for the medication is to treat the physical symptoms of the illness. The older medications, people would get well, then they just stop the medicine. And that would usually be because of a side effect.
Tricyclic antidepressants cause profound other side effects, including changes in blood pressure, untoward effects on the heart, severe problems with the gastrointestinal tract, such as constipation, blurry vision, and other effects. As such, these drugs are not ideal in the treatment of depression.
Well, one question that is commonly asked is, are the newer medications more effective than the older medications? And the answer to that question is no. They're not more effective, but they're easier to use and they're safer to use.
It's not commonly understood that we're very good at treating depression, that 65 to 70% of patients prescribed the very first antidepressant show an excellent response.
One side effect that is often not discussed is sex. Just saying the word makes some people blush. So, steeped in taboo, it's often ignored or not mentioned at all. But side effects from antidepressive medications can rob patients of sexual desire or enjoyment.
Sex sells, or so it seems. One look at American television and you'd think the entire country was obsessed with twisted affairs and forbidden passions. Most people's sex lives may be a far cry from the sizzling antics on display during primetime, but one thing is perfectly clear. Humans are sexual beings, and we all need love, affection, contact, and intimacy. Even as we get older, our sexual feelings and desires continue. In the case of major depression, one very negative side effect of many medications is the potential of causing sexual dysfunction. The traditional antidepressants may treat some of the symptoms of depression, but their negative impact on sexual desire and performance can prompt non-compliance with the medication. Some of the newer drugs that try to more effectively pinpoint the brain chemicals also may reduce sexual desire and the ability to perform. But not all of the new drugs are alike. Some medications classified as aminoketones, like bupropion hydrochloride, have demonstrated very little impairment of sexual functioning. Hopefully, the new generation of treatments will eliminate sexual side effects, because staying in the mood can often be a positive step toward breaking out of a major depression.
He went through his blue period. Now the color's back in his life. Locked in depression's clutches, he found the key. Discovered the art of his recovery. Next on Today's Health.
Believe it or not, mental illness is a family affair. It may only strike one person at a time, but reactions and symptoms to a mental illness impact everyone involved. And it's the family that can help make the road to recovery a lot smoother.
What's going on in the high-tech world of brain scans and imaging doesn't matter much when you feel down, depressed, and mentally fatigued. Possibly the greatest ally anyone with a mental illness can have is a strong, loving family. Friends and family who understand depressive illnesses are in the best position to help the depressed person. Major depression could strike anyone, anywhere, and it can send someone's feelings of self-worth and self-confidence right out the window. A supportive family can help talk the patient through the dark moments and help them maintain a positive self-image. In many cases, the support of family and friends can keep the victim from doing something everyone will regret.
The best way of assessing whether or not someone is depressed enough to think about suicide is to ask about hopelessness. If someone's feeling hopeless, they're going to feel depressed enough to think about suicide.
In the case of someone suffering from major depression, involved family and friends can do more than help someone get by. They may save their life.
When it comes to mental illness, it's always darkest before the dawn. Nearly 45 million Americans living today will experience a major depressive illness in their lifetime. Over 80% of them can be successfully treated, and that makes us a nation of survivors.
I started painting as therapy to make my life semi-normal, because I don't know really what normal is. I've always had every day as a nightmare. I was very creative as a child. I painted, I wrote poetry. Everything creative was my life at that time. I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. I went into the business world and gave up my art and gave up my writing and have paid the penalty for it in 2 depressions. My life was just terror. Getting through every single day was so hard for me. Everything's black because your mind is so weighed down. Nothing brings joy. Sunshine brings no joy. Family brings no joy. Paula finally noticed this change in me, and she's the one who said, "You're going to get help," and I didn't want to, and she said, "You're going to do it for me," and I couldn't argue that point.
He'd have high highs, low lows, get all upset because I couldn't get all excited with him about something.
The first psychiatrist I went to explained to me that the brain was like a 12-cylinder engine, and 6 cylinders of mine had broken down. The first step in getting well is to admit that you need help, that there is something that is beyond your control. The second step in getting well is to seek treatment. I'm on medication. I continually read books about any of the areas where I still have problems or questions, and I've become a much happier person. Paula and I would go to the park and talk about it. And I was gazing at the grass, and sometimes the wind would blow, but most of the time the wind was not blowing. And I noticed that even when the wind wasn't blowing, that there were several blades of grass that were still moving. They don't look any different than the other blades of grass. They're just as tall, they're just as green, but they're moving and the others aren't. And it dawned on me that maybe, just maybe, that they're a little more sensitive to air current than the other blades of grass. And if that could be in grass, why can't it be in people? And maybe I'm just a little more sensitive to life than others. And that was the beginning of me believing that I could get well.
When I saw things got better in our life because of his therapy, I actually got somewhat excited that I thought, well, this time we're going to get it all out, and it'll just make our golden years even better.
Paula was unbelievable. She never doubted that I would get well. She never stopped encouraging me. She never stopped loving me. And she worked with me every day, and she worked as hard as I did. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Paula. The future is finally something that I can think about. Being comfortable in my own skin. I mean, most people just take it for granted. To me, it's, again, it's just special.
Major depression doesn't need to be a one-way ticket into a void of darkness. State-of-the-art medications, psychotherapy, and advancing technologies are helping us pierce this 24-hour-a-day nightmare. There is light at the end of the tunnel. If you suffer from major depression or know someone who does, there is help and there is healing. And I hope this program gives you some insight into this troubling illness. I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Join us again next time as we get right to the heart of matters concerning your life on Today's Health.
This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.